Hello, I'm Bill Willingham, and I'm inviting you to try out Southern Fried Geekery, a podcast of renown.
1, 2, 3.
I watched Black Klansman.
How was that?
Good.
Yeah.
Really good. First time I said that about a Spike Lee film in a long time.
It's been a long time since I've seen a good Spike Lee film. Oh no, a Spike Lee joint.
Sorry, Spike Lee. This is based on some real shit, y'all. For real. That's like the opening, though, because it's a true story.
I've heard. I know it's up for Oscar noms and Academy Awards and everything.
So,
I need to check out that because it sounds
tie
really
it back
good.
to comics. American Carnage,
Right.
that's out right now, is essentially the same story. It's about a guy that he's a half black, half white. He presents as white, and he's in the FBI, I think, and they get him to go undercover into a alt-right hate group.
So it's all based off of that one Dave Chappelle skit. So,
in like the 4th issue of it, he's undercover with them, and they've got a black guy, and they're beating him up, and he ends up killing all of the people there with him. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but he kind of blew his cover.
Wow.
well, you guys want to do a podcast?
Sure.
I'm going old school with it.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast, where we meet once a week. We sit around the table. We chat about a little bit of comics, a little bit of nerd life, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Just really enjoy talking to our friends. And so this week is no different. As usual, I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
I'm Craig Lance.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Jerry.
And we are doing an episode this week that I'm really excited about because if you've been listening to the show, you know we've switched up our formats just a little bit. We're trying some different things. Bless you. Is that what you say to a cough? What do you say to a cough?
I don't know.
Shut the fuck up, Craig.
Pretty much. Sorry.
I would never say that to Craig.
2 minutes
I
in.
was answering your question. It wasn't necessarily directed at you.
2 minutes in, I derailed the show.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I just want to make sure you're okay.
I'm
buddy.
good. I'm not dying.
So in the past month, we've switched up our outlines a little bit to kind of make better use of our time and also kind of give each episode a little bit of a better focus. I think it's really working. I like it a lot. I don't know if anybody else does or not, but we haven't really gotten any feedback from the listeners, which I would love. I would love to know what you guys are thinking about the new format. In my brain, maybe they're just waiting on the new us to finish. So we. Damn you.
That's what they said.
Maybe they're just waiting on us to get the full episode gamut out, which I understand. So that's what I'm going with. But this episode, we're doing listener questions. We had a list. We collected them over quite a bit of time. We've got an expansive set of listener questions.
These were some good questions.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. But this was leading up to this. This was one of my favorite segments of the show when we were doing 2.5 hour long shows in different segments. This was one of my favorite one because it kind of allowed us to expand our points of talking.
And I think listener questions is like at the heart of what started this whole thing at our comic book shop. Yeah, this is like, to me, this is the heart of the show.
Yeah, just sitting around, just getting into stuff. It's crosstalk, right? Like that's what's fun. So before we get into that, though, I do want to remind everybody that we do have a Facebook group now. We got rid of the Facebook page. Kind of, it's still alive. I don't know how. Like
it's going to die at some point.
I set it to die, and it told me it was going to take 14 days, but I'm pretty sure that was 27 days ago. So, and granted, last week was like, for me, I don't know about you guys, last week seems like it's been the longest week of the year. Like, I don't feel like we recorded a podcast in 7 months.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Last week was really long for me too. Work
brutal.
has been brutal.
Oh, it was so hard.
Yeah, last week was technically the beginning of tax season, so
Right.
I
can imagine.
I'm in my own personal hell right now.
I can imagine, man. But anyway, so we have a really great Facebook group. It's growing every day. We're getting lots of people posting stuff. We're posting stuff. Having a really good time. We also have our Instagram and Twitter pages. We're at SFG Podcast on both of those. If you've got something that you want to comment on, or if you have a question, or if you have thoughts, it's longer than what you want to type out in a Facebook post, shoot us an email. We're southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com. I love to get emails from you guys. It makes my heart happy when I open up that inbox and it's like, hey, here's a random email from somebody that we may or may not know. It's the awesomeness. And that's also how you send us your comics. So if you are an indie creator or up-and-coming creator or, Brian Bendis, and you want us to review something for the show, shoot us that email. That's how...
Yeah, please, Brian Bendis, send us your,
right. Let's be
your early
friends.
reviews.
Can we be your friend? So, well, let's get to these listener
Because
questions.
I got some serious questions about Superboy getting old.
Craig's going to be that guy. Be like, all right, so look, let's talk about this right now.
Right.
All right, so let's get into some of these listener questions, guys.
All right, before we do this, I want to just reiterate, as we always do, that this is going to be a review show. We're going to talk about comics. We're going to dig into them a little bit. So inevitably, you can't do that without spoiling some things. So here is your Southern Fried Geekery official, fresh, hot off the rack spoiler warning.
The first one, I should say the first two questions, we're combining into one because I felt like thematically they were similar.
They were similar. Now, I broke the first one into two different answers,
Okay.
which my second answer kind of chimes with the second question. So
Okay, for sure.
go ahead and delve in, and we'll just jump into it.
All right, so I'm going to be going to law school, so I break things down. So question 1A is it comes from our buddy Robert Hafferman, who I love this guy. I love Robert to death. I can't wait to see him in in Chicago for C2E2. Great guy. Thoughts on continuity in modern superhero comics? Is it the death nail or the savior or something in between? Now, we're piggybacking this with a question from Caleb Anderson. He gave us a little bit of a longer treatment of this that I'll actually, it's an incredibly well-worded question, or a couple of paragraphs. So I actually want to read the entire thing because he put a lot of thought into it, and I think it deserves it, quite honestly.
God, he's so long-winded. Hey, Caleb.
I think that has to do, it's got to be something with the name, right? Like Caleb. I know he spells his with a C, but we talk
With a
too
K,
much.
you spell yours with a C.
Oh, are we not that?
No.
Did I switch bodies?
Yes.
Okay, that happens.
He quantum lead for a second in the other Caleb.
I started shit posting about myself.
Did the other Caleb come and take your place?
How many of them are there?
Which one's the real Caleb?
We are legion. All right. So Caleb asks, says, or he presents in discourse. I have a discussion point. I'm not really sure if it has been touched on recently by you guys, but it has to do with the linear progression of characters in media. Bear with me. And we did. We bared with you. I feel like a major problem in most media is that writers don't progress their stories to move characters forward in time and explore the possibilities of them getting old and having to pass on the mantle. Every time they do, it seems like they get... What?
Sorry, Stephanie's not here, and Apollo's just out here having a ball playing with the ball.
So if you hear
behind him.
rattling and things banging
Sorry,
around,
Caleb.
it's
No, you're
definitely
good.
Apollo. Okay, continue.
Every time they do that, they get run back because everyone cries about forced diversity or whatever. Like, for example, Caleb really liked what they... when Wolverine died, they brought over Old Man Logan after Secret Wars to the mainline 616 universe. He kind of just wanted him to maintain being old forever, because it felt like the natural progression of that character. But they have already run it back. That Charles Soule is bringing back the new Wolverine is what he's
Return of
referring to.
Wolverine.
Yeah. For the death of Bruce Wayne, kind of the same thing. And the taking over of Batman by Dick Grayson, which I know is something that Craig has talked about. He really liked that. But they ran that shit back too. I'm saying him because he says me, but bear with me, guys. He says to stop being cowards and change things. Shake stuff up. Sorry if it sounded like a long rant. That's okay. We're right there with you, brother. But he's had this discussion with a few people already, and he feels like that's what it makes for good comic stories is when characters grow. So what are your guys' thoughts on this, Craig? Why don't you kick us off on this one, brother?
Okay, so first of all, for Robert's question, there's two ways to look at it. The first is in the same way that Caleb addressed it, is the linear progression. Is that what he's talking about, or is he talking about what's currently going on in continuity in comic books? So let me address that part first, then we'll move into the bigger question.
For sure.
My opinion is what's currently going on in comic books is we're experiencing almost a golden age of comic books right now. The stories are as good as they've been in the past 20, 25 years or better. When I got back into comics, it was early 2000s, about the time of the Civil War crossover event. And really, there's some complaints about Civil War, but that's what got me back into comics, was that event.
Me too, actually.
And I don't think we've had that level of storytelling for a minute now. And right now, what we're experiencing in comics is absolutely as good as anything that we've, in my opinion, of course, as good as anything that I've read in, certainly my adult years of reading comics. That's my opinion on that part. I don't know if you guys want to address that sort of comment, or if we just want to move into the continuity, the linear progression.
I think it's a fair statement. No, you're right, and I think a lot of why is because Civil War was a story that actually felt like it had stakes.
Right.
That was a story to where Bill Foster died.
Right.
And as far as I know, has stayed dead.
Well, and I mean, Cap technically died immediately following Civil War.
Right.
But it's still part of the effects of what happened in Civil War.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so what I wanted to say is like that was we get these events, we get these moments in these characters' histories to where we're supposed to like the balance is that we're supposed to feel threatened for their life. Like we're supposed to feel like they're endangered. We're supposed to feel like there's something at stake with these stories, and largely we don't. Now, as much as I love superhero comics, I absolutely love these comics. I just kind of accept them for what they are. Like I never am afraid that my favorite hero is going to be dead forever. And if they do die, like they're coming back in a year.
Right.
There's
the next time there's a movie with them in it.
Exactly. There's no meat and potatoes to it. You're not actually fearful for the future of these characters, and that kind of takes away that pulls something off the table. And so I mean, like I said, I've accepted it. But when you go back to stories like Civil War, or you go back to when Frank Miller was writing Daredevil, those stories. They had something to them that made you stop and think like, oh, like they might not make it out of this.
Yeah, because especially back, like I said, the Frank Miller run is a great example because it wasn't a trope yet that a character is going to die and be brought back guaranteed every time.
Yeah,
like when Elektra died, we thought back then that very well could have been it. Mm-hmm. Never see that character again. Personally, and this is going to kind of get into like I guess the meat and potatoes of these two questions. I think that is what needs to happen. I think a true history in comics would improve things. Now, granted, like you said, I know the reboot because they're always trying to get new readers in and they always refresh and they want the same familiar characters. But it didn't always be like that. I mean, there's a reason there's a lineage of Flash characters, from the Jay Garrick first one.
Yeah, from the Golden Age.
Yeah. That used to be the thing, passing the mantle. Whether they died or not, you would have that. But now, like you said, we had a brief glimpse of what we as longtime comic book readers have saw was the inevitability of Dick Grayson taking up the mantle. They teased that for what? About how many issues did that last?
It was a decent run. It was probably 2 years.
Yeah.
But they still backpedal. And like I said, from a business standpoint, I get it. Because they're like, well, everyone knows Batman's Bruce Wayne, and now this is not Bruce Wayne, and readers aren't going to care. While there may be something to that, I do strongly feel like that should be how it is, though. That there should be a natural progression that Bruce Wayne will get old and have to stop.
Okay, so here's my take on this, because I agree 100% wholeheartedly with the premise of this, that it should happen. We know that Marvel just made an attempt to do this, and they made a very, very large attempt over a period of 5 years to try and change characters to new people taking up those totems. As a whole, there's a reason why Marvel went back to what they're doing, and it's not because regardless of what comics hate, that's what I call them now, is comics hate, and other groups want to say it had nothing to do with the quote-unquote quote forced diversity and things like that. The stories were, in large part, very good stories.
Right.
The books weren't selling at the same level that they were selling at when Thor was actually Thor, or when Tony Stark was Iron Man, or when Bruce Banner was Hulk. It doesn't mean they weren't good books, and it wasn't good stories, though. But on a whole, they weren't selling at the same level. Mm-hmm. If they had been, we would still have those stories going on.
Right.
Because when it comes down to it, it's a business, and they've got to sell books to make a living. Yeah. And so, I mean...
Absolutely. And that's actually, Caleb used the example of Dragon Ball. And it's actually a very good example of exactly the point you made as well. When Dragon Ball started, and everyone knows it for Z, which is what he had kind of addressed, how it just became Goku just getting stronger and stronger. But when it started in Dragon Ball, he was a kid.
Yeah.
And you saw him go through from being young and growing, but also changing in appearance. Seeing characters stop fighting because they got old and got underpowered. Like there actually was that evolution. And even into Z, where it became just fight after fight. If my understanding of that story was correct, it was supposed to be he beat the big bad of the universe, Frieza, became the Super Saiyan. And that's like the strongest being in the galaxy. Okay, they gave a little more pressure. Like, okay, man, you're selling millions upon billions of these books. Go more. So, okay, so I understand his final arc was when Goku died fighting the big bad of the next arc, and his son took over as the hero of the world. And Goku died, and that was going to be it. Then they threw more money at him, and it just continued. So it is like the business aspect, I think, is the big factor in why I think a lot of creators want to do this.
Nostalgia sells, right? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, that's the thing is for better or worse, I tend to think it's for worse. The average comic reader is me. The average comic reader is a mid-30s man. And that's changing, and I think it's awesome that that's changing. And it needs to become, the readership has to become more diverse. It has to, older, younger, gender diversity, everything. That's how you grow a bigger audience. But at the moment, the largest swath of comics readers are, mid-30s, the mid-30s folks. Nostalgia sells to us. Even like I'm not a nostalgia. Like I don't have my childhood toys. I don't pine for that thing. I don't go back and watch stuff that was popular when I was a kid. I'm just not a nostalgic person. But nostalgic things sell to me. That piques my interest. And so when you have these characters that are largely being sold to people who are buying into nostalgia, they don't want something that's brand new. They want something that reminds them of the books they were reading when they were kids. And they'll spend their money on it. And I think that's part of the problem. Now, there are some really cool there's some really cool things happening in comics right now. Some are happening actively. I'm going to throw back to about 10, 15 years ago with another one, though. The Valiant universe was built on this idea of age with the characters, of right. showing these characters in real time. You had, right. Archer and Armstrong, Bloodshot, Exo Manowar, all of these guys. The entire premise of that was to age with these characters. That dog is so damn cute. It was to age with these characters in real time. And it worked for a little bit, but then they had to go back and reboot because I guess what? Like people wanted Exo Manowar. Yeah. People wanted their Bloodshot. People wanted their Archer and Armstrong. I'm going to say those three. Those are the main people I know from the title. But now you have things like Faith. You have the Harbingers. This world that they created, that they tried something cool.
I mean, will the stories be greater and better if we allow this to happen? As fans, yes, it would be. I mean, our money speaks.
Well, not only that, but I think you have to look at things on the macro and the micro. I don't think it's going to work on the macro. On the larger scale, people they don't want the line-wide things to die out. But look what Jeff Lemire is doing in Black Hammer right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. These you are jumping through time. You are seeing these characters age very quickly because he's doing these things in 4 issues arcs. You're not like they're going to loop. They're doing a timey-wimey thing where they're going to loop back right now. But you're still seeing a progression of the mantle and the characters and how things work in a linear scale, time-wise and generationally. And if Caleb wants to see some of that, that's what he needs to be reading because that is going to speak to him.
You're not going to be able to find it in DC or Marvel without reading offshoots.
Not on the grand scale.
Yep, you're going to have things like Spider-Man Reign and other things like that are going to give you those stories. Mm-hmm. But go ahead.
I just got a question for y'all for your opinion on this. Do you feel it could be the stories when they have tried to pass the mantles in the last few years? Like, for example, maybe y'all have heard some backlash that I didn't. People seem with the Captain America dying in Civil War, that was written so well and done so properly, people accepted it and it was seen as tragedy, and then they knew the mantle was going to be passed. And as far as I could tell, there wasn't a whole lot of backlash for that. But like even Craig, you didn't like how they wrote how Thor lost a hammer and passed it on.
I still hate it, and I love Jason Aaron, but I still hate that whole premise.
Yeah. And using those examples, do you think if they were a better written way instead of like a cheap write-off, like when Batman just mysteriously disappeared without any explanation, right? And then did the whole time travel thing, and that's when Dick became Batman. Not a great way to get Batman or get Bruce off the mantle.
He didn't mysteriously disappear. He was shot.
That's right.
Omega beams.
That's right. Omega beam. But and then like when there have been some people that took over Spider-Man for hit and miss, but like Do you think if we get a proper event with proper writing that people will be more acceptable to it?
No,
or
I don't
do you think
I
it's
don't
just
think,
nostalgia?
I don't
still?
think these things are ever
Wouldn't help.
going. I don't even know if it's nostalgia. I don't think it's ever going to stick. You're never going to have Peter Parker gone forever,
Right.
and that's the thing. So we have a saying, and we didn't invent it. It's kind of a common phrase. At the end of an arc, the writers put the toys back in the sandbox.
Yep.
You can do whatever you want to do when you're telling your story. Tell your story, do it right, do it good, see what happens. At the end of it,
Soul, we're talking about you.
at the end of it, you put your toys back in the sandbox for the next creator because these are not yours. When we're talking about the big two, when we're talking about Batman, we're talking about Cap, we're talking about Thor, X-Men, Guardians, Avengers, whatever they're doing over in DC. They're not there. Like these are things that
Just blow off the other big one.
Hey, I love it. It's just not
I get it.
my grand wheelhouse. But these are things that they're 80 years old. We're fixing to celebrate 80 years of Batman.
Right.
These things are
We're coming up on 100 years of Superman.
Yeah.
Real quick, guys.
getting close. And so these are writers who are playing with somebody else's toys. At the end of the day, you put everything back in the toy box. And I think that's what you're going to see now. Your indie comics, your Dark Horses and these others, like that's where you're going to see some of these time-specific things happen with those characters. And if that's what you're wanting, go check those out because honestly, they deserve your money. Like Marvel is stamped on my heart. Like I'm pretty sure they own like 50% of my organs. But give the indie people your money. Because if that's what you want, like if that's what you're wanting, then that's where you're going to find it. And they're not the ones who are at the top of the sales charts. They need that money, so give it to them.
And I know Sean and I have talked about it before, and even Caleb and I have talked about it before. But that's probably one of our biggest pulls about reading manga is just the linear progression of characters and character development and everything that they do. And it's just nice to have that. I mean, granted, you do
that's
get
creator owned again.
Yeah,
though, so
yeah.
Although like I said, like as I mentioned with Toriyama and Dragon Ball Z, Shonen Jump did kind of pressure him to keep going when he wanted to end it. But for the most part, absolutely is the good thing about manga. And Caleb mentioned in the question, JoJo is the perfect example of how you can make it work.
Yeah, and JoJo is a really weird, interesting way to look at it for sure because of all their different like timelines and stuff that they represent. But yes, having the new main character and introducing new characters while still having those old characters out there,
right?
Is really great. And
keeping in the theme of now, especially once he introduced the stands, it became a way to introduce a whole new cast, a whole new generation because this is usually years and years in between. While still having the familiarity that you've grown to love in the series of the stand battles.
For sure.
So, but like you said, with manga being definitely more heavy on the creator own, much like the indie scene here, it's easier to do that.
So I want to jump now to the second part of this question where we talk about continuity because we've kind of covered our linear scale, what we think about the passing of time, what we think about the passing of mantles. Let's talk about continuity, which it plays a big role into that. But because we do have 80 years of Batman, we're walking up on, we're getting close to 1,000 issues of Detective Comics. We just passed 1,000 issues of Action Comics. We've got that established. What do you do with all those stories and how do you handle them through reboots and everything else? 2 years ago, I was a stickler for continuity. I wanted it. I wanted, and I still do on some level for the smaller scale. I want people to respect what's happening. I want the editors to know what's going on in these characters' histories. But something has changed in the past 2 years, and I don't necessarily know where it came from for me. But I listened to another. Actually, it's a YouTube cast, but I listened to it through podcast form. It's Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg's Comics Kayfabe. Love that show. And Ed Piskor is, he did Hip Hop Family Tree. He's doing the X-Men, the retelling of the X-Men, the New Genesis or whatever it's called. Fantastic little series of graphic novels and books. He pays homage to continuity, but he doesn't let him hold it down. Like he's changing things. He's changing things to fit with putting this, since the 1960s, this large soap opera into a few series of books, and it's fantastic. He's not pretending like continuity doesn't exist, but he's also not like binded by it. It's not holding him down. And so that's kind of where I come with it now. Short-term continuity is more important to me than long-term. Like go back to that for reference, go back to that for inspiration, but don't be afraid that you're going to have some, for lack of a better word, some weebo in their mom's basement, like blowing you up because, in issue 27 in 1972, something happened that you completely missed. Like, fuck all that noise. Like, just tell your stories. Like, tell your good stories right now, and pay homage to what came before, but don't let it hinder your creativity.
That's kind of why I think Donny Cates, what he does is so appealing.
Right.
Because he'll still pay homage to all the continuity and everything, but he'll add things to it to incorporate his own changes into it for what he's doing.
Yeah.
And you even have a lot of characters that they have to sort of update occasionally just to show that they're in, the now, the present, and they're relevant. Because Captain America, have they changed what war he was in? Because I know they did the same thing with Flash, but I guess they didn't really need to with him because
they don't
he was
have to
frozen
with
in ice.
Cap because
But like with Flash Thompson, like I think he started off and
Vietnam.
he was in Vietnam, but then they changed it and he was in Iraq because of the progression.
Well, I mean,
of
same
time
with him and Punisher.
Yeah.
They were both Vietnam. They would both be in their mid 60s now. Magneto, they're going to have to address that coming up pretty soon because it's a perfect backstory for Magneto that he was a Holocaust survivor because it's
kind of address that with Magneto specifically, saying something about him using like metal particles in there to keep his body in shape or something like that. He's using his ability to kind of, even though they acknowledge his age, that's why he's still like jacked as all hell.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. There's ways to get around it,
and that's why for me, I'm kind of middle ground. Like I fully understand updating continuity, but like I worry that sometimes writers will use that as an excuse of like, oh, we don't need to acknowledge old continuity because they don't want to do their homework. Tom King has been a perfect example of pulling, those deep pulls, these random characters that are historically part of Batman's universe and using them into his own story. And while I'm sure there's been some stuff that maybe I'm not even aware of that he may have changed in the writings, but like I said, he's doing his homework. That's why
you just like it because of Kite Man.
Well, that's the primest fucking example. He rewrote, I'm sure, Kite Man's original origin, or at least the original personality.
He gave him one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in this day and age, like, because a lot of people say, well, we need new continuity. We don't need to always acknowledge the past because the readers can't go out and afford to buy a $500 comic book to read what happened back then that we're referencing now. But that's why the internet is so prevalent. I don't feel that's a problem anymore.
No, it's not.
So, years ago, I heard Stan Lee talking about overpowering superheroes. And he said it's a natural progression of the superheroes that the longer they're around, the more powerful they get. And I'm going to get to my point on all of this in a second, but hear me out for a second. So you have Thor fights the Hulk. Neither one of them is going to lose because they're both good guys, right? So what has to happen? Well, Hulk beats Thor this time. Thor comes back next time and beats Hulk. So what happened? Thor got a power up? And so he talks about this constant back and forth where you have them progressively getting stronger. Superman during Silver Age and Bronze Age Superman became so OP that they had no choice but to reboot Superman and depower him some. Because, I mean, literally anything he needed to do, they just gave it to him.
Right.
Oh, he needs to be able to do this? Oh, guess what? He can...
Yeah, every new issue.
Yeah, I mean... he couldn't even fly when he first.
No, he leaped tall buildings in a single bound. That was
essentially what the Hulk does.
Yeah,
right.
He jumps really far. That's what he was able to do. So,
falling with style.
Falling with
Are
style.
you saying that eventually the Hulk is going to be flying? Because I find that very terrifying.
There is an issue where he jumps into space and jumps from asteroid to asteroid. So I might consider that flying if I could jump into space. Yeah, basically, you're talking about these superheroes powering up, right? So it's just a natural progression of their story. But the problem is they get so powerful that you have to do some minor resets with them. And this goes back to before the days when they would put, as Caleb said, put the toys back in the sandbox, because back then, you didn't even necessarily know when creators changed teams.
Well, not only that, but you also didn't have stories that lasted more than 1 or 2 issues.
Right.
You were one and done back in, for a long time. Stan Lee really is the one who came in and changed all of that. Well, and Eisner, who gave us these broader stories.
But, even Stan Lee's early stuff, Spider-Man, every issue at the beginning was a single issue story.
The co-run.
So, so before they really knew, hey, you got to kind of reset it back to where it was, tell your story, but give us a fresh start for a new person to jump on there when you leave. before that whole mentality was there, they just kept building and building and building. And so that started us down in DC, all the crisis events. And then, we've had, numerous events in Marvel to reset as recently as Secret Wars, which was kind of a soft reboot a couple of years back. It's just going to be one of those things that I think we're going to continue to see happen.
Before we move on, I'm just going to throw out there that anytime you have Thor beat the Hulk, it's just because of bad writing.
Caleb just likes to be wrong.
No. No.
This is one of those situations where Thor is one of my favorite characters. And Hulk,
It's only if it's Jane Foster Thor.
Does Thor
Hulk.
smash? Thor doesn't smash. Hulk smashes.
So Jane Foster Thor would probably beat Hulk because they kept powering her up and powering her up.
I don't know. I don't accept this premise. All right, moving on. We're going to agree to disagree.
We're going to get into a super nerd debate over if
Mom
Goku
and Dad
can
are
beat
fighting
Superman or not.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting right
Superman
now. Jerry.
wins.
Craig's thoughts are
wins.
independently of his own accord and do not reflect upon Southern Fried Geekery as a whole.
It depends on what era of Superman we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just sick of that fight to death.
I know. Yeah,
I just want both of them to just kill each other.
It's
That'd be
it's
awesome.
silly.
They
It's
both
just
die.
it's silly.
Sentry just stands over their dead bodies laughing.
Just blinks them out of existence.
Bloop. I mean, Molecule Man wins. Anyway, so
For sure.
the
Scarlet
next.
Witch.
Ooh, yeah, duh, right? Durr.
She just says no more stupid fights.
The IQ level of the podcast just sank.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so our next question comes to us from Emily Freshour. I think it's Fresh Hour. Is it Fresh Hour or Fresh Hour?
Yeah, fresh
Yes.
I'm going to go with Fresh Hour.
Yeah.
Emily, if I mispronounced your name, feel more than welcome to come on the podcast and fight
just
us.
tell us.
Well, you can fight Jerry.
You beat up Jerry for us.
I'm a lover, not a fighter, and I'm not even a good lover. So, so she says, suddenly, magically, poof, a person that doesn't like comics appears. Who are these people, Emily? Who? You have. I'm married to one. You have one chance to convert them into a comic reader. What do you give them? Why? Let's start with Jerry on this one.
Oh, I was going to say, how did you convert Roger into liking comics?
I'm unsuccessful. I've tried.
So you have nothing for that. I've got a few answers, so I'll give two of them because I'm pretty sure these are on other people's lists. And it really depends because whenever I worked at the comic book store and people would come in and they've never read a comic before, I would kind of get their opinions of things and what they're into.
Ding, ding, ding. That is the correct answer.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is really
Yeah,
okay. Moving on.
It's different
Yeah.
from individual to individual.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Because comics are not a genre; they're a medium.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I've had so many people come into the comic book store and just completely not be interested in superheroes.
Yeah.
I mean, I would usually fall on Saga, right? That's the easiest answer.
I thought about that one.
Yeah. If I did have somebody that was interested in superheroes but didn't necessarily know where to start, there's always like the newest book on the shelf that's like the lowest amount of numbers that we still have. But in order, just trade paperbacks, if they're interested in DC, Kingdom Come. If they're interested in Marvel's. It gives you a good grasp
answers.
of these characters and their struggles and especially Marvel's. And they're both done by Alex Ross. So you couldn't ask for a better opening point for an artist of a series to get
I
into.
think they're both Mark Wade and Alex Ross.
I think
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Right.
I forgot that Mark Wade did
Kind of
Marvel's.
interesting that Mark Wade kind of wrote the seminal story for
for-
the struggle for both.
On that one, Mark Wade did not write Kingdom Come. That's Alex Ross wrote it. Mark Wade scripted it.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that's a completely an Alex Ross an idea, a story. He
Yeah,
told
he came
to,
up with a story, and Mark
he
Wade
told
wrote
to
the
Mark,
script
and
for it.
Mark Wade wrote the script for it.
Yeah,
So
that's
nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
I like it when it's a good collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those are really mine.
Those are
'Cause-
solid answers.
Yeah, because you just get a good, especially for Marvels, you get an amazing taste of all the characters, kind of what they're about and what they're going through, and you don't get it from their perspective. You get it from the perspective of a regular person.
Yeah,
so
right.
I really really enjoyed Marvels, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
Plus, you had Bruce Banner writing.
No,
No,
that
that's X.
Earth X
yeah.
or Planet X. I can't
Yeah,
remember which
Earth
one.
X. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry, you nailed it on the head. Really, It's all a matter of like their pre-existing taste.
Mhm.
If they like mature sci-fi, I would definitely throw Saga at anybody.
Mhm.
For more of just like, for me, a lot of it is also familiarity. Like whether you're like comics or not, you know who Batman is. You
Right.
know who Spider-Man is. So I would, can't really pull any specific one, but like I would definitely throw the first Tom King trade paperback at anybody who just like, I've seen the movies or whatever. I'm not really into reading books. Try Batman.
Throw the third one at them. The first one wasn't very good.
Yeah, skip the first one.
I enjoy Gotham, but it's fine. But that's fair too, because like even if like say they don't read, because I get that I've been talking to some like a lot of the kids at my job now. I call them kids; they're all teenagers, but they watch a lot of the movies that not all of them read.
Right.
So I've been trying to kind of talk to them about that, doing what I do. but yeah, Tom King, War of Jokes and Riddles, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. See that one? Yeah.
Which I believe that was the third one.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely throw that out there. Or I would just really find any kind of recent Spider-Man, that Miles Morales, especially with Into the Spider-Verse just being as big as it was. I'll give that. And I just think I think Spider-Man, Batman are definitely like kind of the more iconic characters that would get anyone who doesn't read books. That's a familiar starting point. Superman, just because of how weird it's been here lately, I might go some classic Superman if you don't think like the 90s art or the 80s or 70s art would throw them off.
I would actually give them the current Superman.
Yeah, and honestly, the current one's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
So, that's familiarity for me is how you kind of get in there. Like, who Superman is, even if you don't read. So, that's the way I would go with it.
I like for my Superman recommendation always had been because
Red Sun.
it's the only really one that I read, and I'm like, oh, you like Superman? Well, here's Communist Superman.
Read Red Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go next.
Yeah, go ahead,
You
buddy.
didn't tell me to, but I'm going to. So
We don't need your permission, Kate.
I didn't say you did.
I broke mine down into genre because just a handful of genre here because of the reasons that Jerry already stated. Horror for me, if they're a horror fan, I'm going to hand them Harrow County.
I love you.
It's
Look me in the eyes when I say it. I love you.
Ooh, I feel that smell.
Tingle? Yes, sir. That's the magic.
So, yeah.
That's how I got Roger.
So sci-fi, I don't know that there's a bigger book than Saga as far as sci-fi goes. So high fantasy, it's going to be Sandman. If they're just into high concept fantasy books, that's where I'm going to go with that. Superhero, I went with Days of Future Past with the X-Men because the Claremont stuff was my introduction into superhero comic books. So to me, that's where I'm going to go back to bring somebody else in. Or if they want something 100% self-contained, something like The Watchmen, depending on their maturity level. Post-apocalyptic stories, because there's people that's their favorite genre.
AKA you.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I would probably go with Why the Last Man Standing.
Invasion stories.
So
That's a good list.
yeah, I tried to put together a handful of different genres, and this is kind of crazy because Nick Helms, our buddy that did Gotham Knights, he sent me a message the other day and asked me exactly this question. He's signed up for Red Hood, and he wanted to know what other books to sign up for, and I'm like, well, what do you like? Well, I don't know. I have to get back to you on it. Well, let me know, and then I can direct you in the way to go. So,
Well, don't worry. I told him to go get Savage Dragon. He did.
oh, well.
yeah. He asked me, and I was like, "Holy shit! I've only got like Marvel recommendations."
So, yeah. So, Caleb, what about you?
I followed the rules. No, I'm just kidding.
The rule you made, surprise.
I didn't make. Emily made the rule. I didn't
Whatever.
make the rule. Emily made it.
We didn't see the original documentation. We don't know what's been altered. Sorry.
I just picked one book, but I picked one book with all of the things that you guys said and had in mind because, again, and this is something this is the hill I will die on. Comics is a medium, not a genre, and a medium presents a wide swath for a variety of people. And I mean, you guys, there's no better way to say it than what you've already said. But the book I picked specifically because I think it hits multiple genres. I think it is broad enough that it piques the interest for people who like sci-fi or for people who like literary fiction.
It's going to be Conan.
It's not Conan.
Conan is super sci.
Conan is not always the answer.
It's not even the Hulk. So the book I picked is I Kill Giants by Joe Kelly and J.M. Ken Namera. If you want fun, energetic fantasy, it's got that covered. If you want something that's going to make you cry, it's got you covered. If you want something that involves, if you want something that involves kids, it's got you covered. If you want something that is in a way a superhero-esque, or at least a diatribe on superheroes, it's got that. It's a little bit horror. It's a little bit, there's no Western tropes to it, but it's a little bit adventure. It's a little bit of everything. And
Western Jonah Hex.
Nobody likes Westerns. Don't worry about
shit,
it.
that's a lie.
I
I
know.
love Westerns. But I Kill Giants has a little bit for everybody, and I think if you don't have to have a big hit, like we just answered a question about continuity and about the history of comics. You don't have to carry any baggage into this. You're introduced to those characters. There is a movie that's almost a shot-for-shot adaptation. It's one of the best adaptations of comics ever made, in my opinion, as far as staying true to the source material. You can go back and watch afterwards, and you can see how it works. It really is, to me, something that if you hand somebody that has never read comics and you want to say, hey, this is what comics can do, there is no better offering than that. Because, enclosed story, all the things that you guys have talked about, it's in that one book. And at the end of the day, it's not hard to read, so it doesn't do a lot of the, it's not doing any weird panel things the way some of the books do. It pretty much reads straightforward. It's easy. It's a simple comic book to read from panel to panel, but it's packed with emotive material. And if you hand that to somebody who is not a comics fan, and you say, "Hey, look, if you can't be down with this, let me know. We'll find something else for you." But I think if you find anybody who is going to like comics, they're going to like that book. I've met people who don't like that story because of they don't want to feel things that story makes you feel. I get that, but I've never met anybody saying, "Hey, that's not a quality, well put together thing." As far as packaged and as far as what it does, I think that's, to me, that's one of the perfect choices. If I hadn't have read that story, and if I was just a prose reader, and somebody gave that to me and said, "Hey, I know you might have the misconception that comics are only this one type of thing," and they handed me I Kill Giants, would completely change my perception of how comics work. And so that would be mine.
I would like to say you followed the rules, but so did all of us.
You did. No, I was just fucking with you.
Fucks you, Caleb.
I mean, I thought of another one. Of
course you did.
But it's
he worked in a comic shop. This is literally his job.
Yeah,
was the job.
It's actually has all of the emotions and everything, and really kind of shows the struggle of characters. Is God Loves, Man Kills?
Yes.
The storyline for the X-Men, and it's where they bring in Reverend Stryker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really, really brilliant writing.
It's an amazing one.
Yeah.
Claremont.
So
Yep.
I was originally going to say for X-Men Giant Size #1, but then I bought the omnibus for that, and then they all kind of became assholes and tried to split up after that issue. So it kind of shattered my whole perspective of that book.
What team books make the characters fight each other?
Yeah.
What? All right.
I mean, that was a really fun question, though.
It was. Yeah, no,
You know what book I wouldn't give somebody? We Three.
No.
I would not, because they would never read another comic book again.
No.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic book, don't get me wrong, but that would not be the first book I would give them.
Absolutely.
So let me get this straight. This is your first romp into comics, and you picked up the cross trade paperback. Well then.
Yeah.
I almost went with my favorite thing is Monsters, but that's a big book.
Yeah.
That book has got some meat to it.
Yeah.
I think you need to put a few more under your belt before you read that one.
Yeah, and for me, my first little real romp into the Marvel universe, just reading everything, was Marvel Civil War. The thing that got me to branch out and read, try other things, Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read that and it just blew my mind.
Yep.
So I'm going to add to this question because we have a little bit more time. If somebody were to hold your hand and walk into the comic shop right now and take you to the new releases wall, what comic would you hand them right now? For me, I would take them right over to Immortal Hulk and put that in their hand and be like, "Hey, this is what you need to read right now."
Yeah, that's a good one. Go ahead, Jerry.
I would say Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I just really love that first issue, that or Venom. Donny Cates is just killing it.
Avengers. Absolutely put Avengers in their hands.
What did you say, Craig?
I was going to say Immortal Hulk, and then I was going to say Avengers. So I will go with my third choice, which is Thor.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically,
Marvel's killing.
well, yeah. if it pick something that's not Marvel then. DC. You walk over to the DC shelf. In an alternate universe, the DC shelf is the first shelf
Okay.
before the Marvel shelf.
If I walk over to the DC shelf with a new comic reader right now, I'm going to hand them Freedom Fighters #1, the Vendetti book that takes place on Earth X.
It's really good.
Good one. That is a great one.
That's the first thing I would think of.
Jerry?
Eddie Barrows, man.
Young Justice.
There you go.
Yeah, young, which is kind of funny because it's like, hey, here's a story about all these characters that aren't like main characters that they're gonna do some weird shit with that you're probably gonna go way over your head. But fucking writing is great, and I really wait to see where those characters go.
Yeah. Just like don't say Batman. Legitimately though, I would honestly put Teen Titans.
Yeah.
Get in the first trade, like find the earliest issue of the current run.
Yeah,
I would put Teen
It's
Titans.
funny.
in
It's
their
like,
hands.
hey, here, start this book. I actually had that conversation with somebody because they were on Brimstone and Damage, and they're like, I just found out these are getting canceled, and they're like, my only DC books, what do I read? And I'm trying to tell them like, we'll start Teen Titans, but at this issue, and they're like, well, I don't really like starting. And I'm like, just trust me, I think it was like 21 or 22 or something.
Something like that with the new team.
Yeah.
So I don't say Batman. I'm going to say Brimstone.
Well, we know
even
the
though
answer
it's
is always
canceled.
Batman.
Even though Brimstone's being canceled, it was a fantastic run. Pick it up and trade.
Absolutely.
The other book would be probably either Action or Superman right now.
So let's keep going down
Yep.
the wall.
I was about to say.
Non big two. It can be Image, can be Dark Horse, Boom. I'm gonna go out on a limb. And it's something I only read digitally. It's Giant Days from Boom. That book is insanely good. It's lighthearted. It's fun. It's emotive. It's not superheroes. It's 3 chicks in college, just being quirky and weird and fun. I love it. Absolutely love that book.
I'm glad we're going clockwise so I can beat Craig to any of the ones that he's going to say.
Hey, Craig, what book would you pick up?
Gideon Falls. Shut up. Shut up, Craig.
Falls, that's a good choice. That's a good choice.
Yeah.
Solid choice.
I know what Sean's going to make.
That or Black Hammer.
Do you?
I do.
What?
I'm going to say Savage Dragon.
That's the real answer, and I would put it on anybody out there. But again, keeping in the theme of someone who's like new to comics or whatever, just walking in, I put Middle West in their hand.
Okay, for
That's
sure.
a good
Yeah.
one.
Sword Daughter's not bad too.
Yeah.
It's not your turn.
I know. Sorry.
Totally lost my train of thought. So, yeah, I would probably go with Black Hammer, or I would go with I'll just leave it at Black Hammer for now. That Sparrowhawk's really good. There's so many good
There are.
independent books right now. It's
So they get one each from us from Marvel and DC, but like on the indie shelf, we're like, yeah, you probably want to read that one. And
Right,
that
yeah.
one,
Well, there's
for
more
this
variety.
one.
It's got a giant bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, just knocking them off the shelf almost every issue.
I mean, yeah, Red Sonja just came out. Red Sonja #1 is a book that needs to be read.
Lone Rangers is a
yeah.
good book. That's,
Both of those
that people
are-
need to read.
both of those are
Mark
Mark
Russell,
Russell.
both good.
All right, so let's jump to this next question real quick. You already said his name, but it's Mr. Nick Helms, the host and purveyor of the Good Stuff podcast, and also plays the Red Hood on the Gotham Knights web series.
Yeah.
So he wants to know, what Marvel and DC villain would you like to see done live action? And
This was a fun question.
This was. I like this one. I'm going to kick us off. If you've listened to this show before, you know the answer. And you're not going to be surprised to hear me say it. If you haven't listened to the show before, you're going to side-eye me real hard. But I'm going to explain. Let me get through this. From Marvel, it's Mole Man. I'm not a fantastic. Look, I don't read Fantastic Four right now. Fantastic Four is not historically not my thing. This one comes directly from what I've seen cinematically. They've given us one Fantastic Four movie, one Fantastic Four movie, and one Fantastic Four movie that deserves like execution style being taken out to the backyard.
Fan-tastic.
You remember when we watched that?
Nope.
And by watch it, I mean let it run on the TV while we play
no.
Monster Hunter on our DS.
That's the best way to enjoy that movie.
I knew that movie was going to be bad, so I snuck in a fifth of whiskey into a theater with me and got fucked. By the end of it, I was just drunk and laughing at the screen. But so here's the reason I picked Mole Man, though. I think that there is a good Fantastic Four story to tell. I think there's a good Fantastic Four story to tell cinematically now. And I think you do that by doing a lot of what Marvel has done with other movies. You take a genre film, like not a superhero film. You make a genre movie and you make it with superheroes. Marvel hasn't really done, per se, a horror film yet. And I think that if they take the Fantastic Four and they take a character like Mole Man and they do it like the movie The Descent, if they take something like that and they create a horror film based off of this subterranean fucking nightmare, mixed with a little bit of Hills Have Eyes kind of thing going on with it, starring Mole Man as the big bad guy, it's gangbusters, dude. You're making money hand over fist. It's a good villain.
Absolutely.
Not to derail this, but you should read the book Descent.
Oh yeah,
the prose novel.
Mhm.
Oh my god.
well, and the Cave too is another good one that's right in that same vein. And I just think if you do that, you're killing it. Like that's a badass villain on the screen, and it's terrifying. And it's taking somebody who is relatively a joke within the continuity of Marvel within the long story. Like nobody thinks. I mean, right now he controls Monster World. Like he's used as kind of a gimmick villain. Like he's almost comical at this point, and he doesn't have to be. He can be terrifying.
For sure.
And I think that's the answer to that one for me. For DC, I'm going to cheat on this one a little bit. I'm going to break the rules. I don't have a single villain. I have a group of villains. It's the Court of Owls. I would love to see a straight up, like a mafioso style conspiracy theory Batman film starring the Court of Owls. Not one, because if Batman, he punches the bad guy, right? Like he has to. That's how he stops it. He has to punch it. What if there's not one bad guy? What if the bad guy is not something tangible or not something he can put his hands on? What if it's this Machiavellian unit working from behind the scenes to disrupt all of Gotham, to disrupt everything? What does he do then? Well, I mean, if you've read the books, like if you go back and read Snyder's, and that's Snyder's run is not my favorite run on Batman. It's hit and miss for me, but the Court of Owls run was bonkers. Love that. It's Poppy Capullo's art on that is beautiful. The story's great. So I want to see that in live action, which, maybe we'll get, maybe we won't get, but the Court of Owls is a terrifying thing to think about within the confines of Gotham, within how that political structure of that dark city works.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we'll bounce back over to Craig this time and let him go.
Okay.
That's probably for the best because mine were really close to Caleb's.
Okay. So for Marvel, I actually chose King the Conqueror. I think King would be a great next overarching villain like they did with Thanos. You take a couple Avengers movies to build up to it, and then you bring him in. Now, the trick with him is he's based in time travel, and I don't love that concept for the movies. But if you do it kind of high concept like Jonathan Hickman did, where he's already changed the past and these are the consequences of what's happening, I think that would work. So that's who I think would be a good villain for Marvel. DC, I went with Atrocitus. Atrocitus. And the reason why I went with
Red Lantern.
the Red Lantern.
Okay, let's make it sure. For us who don't know.
Yeah, so if you did the next Justice League movie and you brought him in with the Red Lanterns, it would be a fantastic way to introduce the Green Lanterns without having to give backstory. You could insert your favorite Green Lantern here, Hal, Kyle, John, Guy, for the two people that love Guy. And
that's Matt and I.
and have them show up and, hey, we know how to fight them. This is, these are our power rings. And we had a flash of Green Lantern in the Justice League movie. So it would be, in my opinion, it would be a great way to reintroduce. Did you not catch it?
I haven't watched it yet, so
yeah, it's not one of the Earth
very
ones.
subtle.
Yeah,
and I think that'd be cool if they had Guy, because then eventually we could get that scene where he's dual wielding rings, just murdering things. Yeah.
So I just thought that would be an interesting way to reintroduce Green Lantern back to that world without having to give us a backstory for how they became a lantern and all that. You can do that later once people are aware of this character and you make them actually a hero first. And
for sure.
Instead of having a 20-minute trip to Oa that teaches you everything you need to know about how to wield the ring.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. He fixed it. He retconned that in Deadpool too.
talk about time travel. We should. I want to cast Ryan Reynolds as King the Conqueror.
That would be perfect, actually.
We just jumped the meta shark.
Yeah. All right, who's next?
All right. My Marvel pick technically has been already live action, but if you didn't know who he was supposed to be, you never would have fucking guessed. Absorbing Man. Which he was in the Ang Lee Hulk technically.
No.
They said that's who he was supposed to, his father was supposed to become Absorbent Man. But now picture this. The Absorbent Man from the comics that we know. Going through battle. I feel like his power could be super cinematic. Super cinematic. Just because I picture him fighting, like, even if it is one-on-one or even a group of heroes, like, if they want to put him against the Avengers, whether he's the big bad or not. Just imagine him going through the different elements as he's fighting different people, switching around. It's just, I can see it visually being a very fun villain on screen.
Have you don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., do you?
Has he been on that? No, I've never watched
He's
Agents of Shield.
A lot of people don't like that show. I really enjoy that show.
Yeah, I know it's been hit and miss with
that's one of the few shows. I mean, that's one of the few shows I'll watch in full season form. But yeah, Crusher Creel he's been all up in that.
Okay, as Absorbent Man.
Yeah, as Absorbent Man. And he even has his wrecking ball at one point in time.
See, that's great.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm just picturing the spinning camera angle is fighting through, going from concrete to asphalt to metal of a car. While in the same fight. Well, because typically, from what I've seen, and granted, I haven't read anything with him in a while, he typically touches one thing. That's basically what he is for the entire fight, whether it's his wrecking ball or just like a brick wall. Yeah, but I could just see in my head is super fucking cool.
He was in Immortal Hulk.
Oh yeah,
you did show me that. You did show me that.
Oh, that book is so good. But he also, they're working with a TV budget for that, so you're not getting in the movie. I would love to see that done. But if you want to see what they did on the TV thing,
that actually makes me very interested in checking it out.
Yeah, he's in, and they do it right. They do it in a way that he's not all bad, definitely not good. But the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are using him as a pawn, kind of a little bit.
Interesting.
It's fun. Just check it out.
All right. Well, then, ironically, because my second pick also, I mean, you could do it in the movie, but it's certainly not the main baddie. But I could see it working well in a TV series. Okay, so this is for DC. So picture Batman in this case, or anyone really investigating a series of crimes.
It's Kite Man, isn't it?
No,
I know.
hell yeah, a series of crimes. First one. All the calling cards of the Penguin. Mm-hmm. Then almost immediately afterwards, another crime, and it's the Joker. It's this, like, all these, like, the signs are showing of all these different villains doing separate, but almost so close together it's linked. The end reveal is Dula Dent.
Yeah.
Going to just full on fangirl for villains. And, like, you don't know who it is until the very end of just a schizophrenic woman who just changes her personality with every crime she does.
Yeah.
I would love to see something like that. I think that could be done very well and very interesting.
Yeah.
So, definitely hasn't been done before, but Galactus as my Marvel villain.
He's never been done. No, never.
Listen to Sean. He's a smart man.
There was a cloud in one movie that had a shape.
But yeah, you always have this, like, giant looming threat. Like, it is Galactus is a force to be reckoned with in the Marvel universe.
You haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., have you? No, I'm just kidding. He's not in that.
I mean, I was gonna be like, okay, but on the big screen.
No, he hasn't been in that.
It would be funny if they did that and they did more with their budget than,
Right.
But yeah, I think, honestly, I kept coming up with ideas and they were more cosmic based. I just think we need more cosmic. Yeah. Well, I just think we need more cosmic MCU in general.
You think so?
Yeah.
Other than, like, the last two Avengers movies and
but it was
Guardians
funny
of the Galaxy.
But it was cosmic enough at all. But it was funny because Fantastic Four villains,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I had a second one that was Fing Fang Foom.
Okay.
Which would be
I almost put Fing Fang
Foom. Insane. I am surprised you didn't say Kraven.
I would love to see Kraven, but I think we're getting that soon. Yeah. So they're doing Sony's doing that as part of their they just did Venom. Mm-hmm. I think the next movie or the movie after the next one is going to be a Kraven film. So I didn't want to say something that I knew we were getting.
Yeah.
But he's on my list of things that'd be cool to see, but he definitely is not my top.
Yeah.
Is their idea to kind of reverse the MCU instead of having I quit. Instead of having, like, introducing all the characters and then having a Avengers deal, are they introducing all of Spider-Man's villains so they can have, like, a Sinister Six?
I mean, that's actually been that's been the big rumor, is, like, what's more important than this expanding on Spider-Man is expanding his Rogues Gallery for a Sinister Six film.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me is like that wanted Venom to not do as well as it did, just so they wouldn't. Because I don't know that I have that many like Spider-Man villain solo movies in me. So then my DC, I actually went with a team, the Crime Syndicate from Earth 2.
Yeah.
I originally just had Owlman because I think he'd be awesome, but then Caleb did Court of Owls, and I didn't want to feel like I'm copping out for the same thing that Caleb's doing.
Well, that's not no.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
Owlman's
true.
completely separate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, just to have all these characters that are just as smart, just as powerful as the Justice League, you know, coming in and pretty much just wrecking shop on them.
And it'll be comprised of all the actors who left their roles in the DC universe who are now taking on the new replacement.
God, that would be fucking brilliant. Can we? Okay, but who would your Owlman be? Because there's been so many Batman.
Michael Keaton.
Oh yeah, let's bring
Keep
it
the
back.
evil bird theme going.
Or another good one would have been Thomas Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally, wholeheartedly. Clayface was my original
also
first
a good one.
choice. Yeah.
The
Another
thing
very-
that scares me with DC and Clayface is if you've seen DC CGI in the movies.
True. Yeah.
All right. So our last listener question on the list. I think we have one more that I left off the list for next time. But I just want to reiterate: if you have a question, I'm going to put up a post either today, Sunday, or tomorrow. That is going to be kind of a collective spot for questions. So please drop them there. But this one comes from Mike Del Vecchio. And he wants to know, he says, comics that took you most by surprise, or what is a series that you didn't expect to like and now is a must read for you? And he says you can even expand that to creators if you want. We'll start with Sean on this one, buddy. What was yours? What surprised you?
Honestly, the comic I picked was one I had heard about, had already been doing really well, and I jumped on it really late. 121 chapters late that I knocked out in about 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's the manga Promised Neverland,
Okay.
which I believe, I'm not going to get too much detail because I'm pretty sure we're going to cover here in a future episode. But that manga came out of nowhere because I'd heard of it. I heard it was doing well in Shonen Jump. And when I finally just sat down and watched the first episode of the anime, I jumped on the Shonen Jump app and read 121 chapters in almost like about 3 days or so.
Nice.
For me, it would have to be Donny Cates as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd heard you guys talk about him enough, you know, with this solo indie stuff that he had done.
Redneck and whatnot.
Yeah. But in the vein of his stuff, I never thought I'd be reading a Thanos book, and it just blew me away. And he's definitely kind of restored my faith in certain characters and everything. You guys know that I've never really liked Eddie Brock before. He freaking brought him in a big way for me. As far as DC goes, Secret Six, Gail Simone's Secret Six series.
That started off so good.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was good pretty much the whole way. The New 52 one was just meh.
Yeah.
But she just took all these fucking, like, you know, C-listers and stuff and made them...
Brought back Ralph Dibny.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, they were just amazing. I never thought I'd like Catman. Yeah, and she really did some awesome stuff with Bane as well. Just a whole lot of really great stuff out of that series.
Very cool.
All right, so for me, the book Weapon H came out. It's a Greg Pak book. I did not think I was going to like that book at all. I jumped on it because I liked what Greg was doing with Hulk, and so the premise of this book is they take a character and they imbue him with, you know, genetics from the Hulk and genetics from Wolverine, and they give, you know, because that's where Wolverine first appeared at, they give you this Hulkverine character. And I saw it and I was like, okay, this is stupid. This is going to be a dumb gimmick. I'll pick up the first issue, but I'm not going to like it.
And then you liked it.
And then I fell in love with it. It's fun, dumb, stupid comics. It's a simple concept. Yes, it is hokey, but it's hokey in the right way. It's ridiculous. But they're actually mixing it in with some very big moves in the Marvel Universe right now.
Yep. With
the guy that he's, you know, they've been in Weird World for a while. The things
Roxanne.
the things that they're doing with Roxanne, which part of that's going to play into the forthcoming War of the Realms from the Thor thing that they're
And
doing.
then you got a Hulk
lot of
Vereen
series
book
that are
coming
planned.
And then
into that.
that book actually just ended, and now you're getting a Hulk Vereen book. It's ridiculously fun. The art was cool. It was very thin line, scratchy, heavy. It's just crazy, dumb, fun
It
comics,
really was.
and I absolutely loved it.
Okay, because I don't follow rules as we established earlier.
What a
Actually-
rebel.
I actually have 3 older books and then 1 current book. So the first one's the Luther Strode series by Justin Jordan and Trad Moore.
Yeah,
I didn't know who Justin was at this point in time, and I read this book and it made me a lifelong fan of Justin Jordan. I think you finally got around to reading it.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah.
read it a little while back. It's an amazing book.
Another one that had no right to be nearly as good as it was Next Wave Agents of Hate, which happened right after Civil War. And it was Warren Ellis and Stuart Immonen. They took a bunch of what I would call B+ and C list characters and made you fall in love with them, and had Fing Fang Foom as the bad guy. I mean, it's if you haven't read Next Wave, do yourself a favor and get out and read it. It is so funny. It's so good. It's worth the $15 for the trade paperback.
I haven't read it, and I've got to check that out.
One more of the older is Hack Slash. Had no right to be what it turned out to be, but I mean, it's a book about Tim Seeley is the main creator on it. Emily Stone, I think, was the artist on the first, so she gets credit as well. But it was really kind of Tim Seeley's baby all the way through. It's about a character that her mom turns out to be an 80s horror slasher called the Kitchen Lady. And so she sets her life to going around and killing slashers. And that her name's Hack, so Hack Slash. So
Nice.
yeah,
You've talked about it before. That sounds like an amazing book.
it really is. And then current books, the book that really right now has me so surprised, it has I've said this on 2 other books. I'm going to say it one more time. You can edit it out if you want.
No, you're good.
No right to be what it is. West Coast Avengers.
Yep.
That book is so freaking good, and it's just like when I saw the first cover of this, I was like, I'm going to hate this book. Nothing about this book is anything I want to read. Then I read it, and there was land sharks, and it was amazing. Then we had Tigress that was 20 stories tall, and that was amazing. And it's just a good book.
Kelly Thompson's just a badass, dude.
Yeah.
She made me like Gwenpool.
Yeah.
That's a feat.
That's pretty impressive.
Again, gimmick characters, I'm not a big fan, but I haven't liked her since her inception. But now I can't. Get
And
enough
I
of her.
actually heard that her little solo series was really good.
I wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, I had never really been interested in gimmick characters either. Okay,
I love that
that's
she
not
was-
true.
I was
like,
calling.
who are you
Yeah.
talking
I was
about?
calling
Call me out.
bullshit myself.
yeah. That's I thought about it and I was like, I like 50 different versions of Spider-Man. But yeah, I mean, I think it's more of like a Deadpool thing because that character is way overplayed,
Right.
and in my opinion,
I love that
disagree.
Gwenpool has been rebooted or whatever, and she absolutely knows that her
Yeah.
power set's different now.
yeah.
I love that she has a baby land shark now named Jeff.
Yeah, that was so
That makes me
amazing.
happy in my soul. All right, so thank you guys for those questions because they just filled up the last hour or so of our time with some really, really good conversation.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
fun.
I like this is the part of I used to love doing this every week. So this is the only part of the new format that I'm just like, oh, we don't get a listener question this time. But I do also love doing them all at once because it gets
Well,
those
the reason
wheels
we broke
spinning,
it up
man.
is because we just spent an hour on 3 questions.
Exactly.
So we can spend more time on it now and really delve into
dedicate the time that they deserve because they're good questions.
Absolutely.
We have some smart people that listen to this
Give
show.
us more questions.
I can't. I'm going to get that post put up, and I can't wait to see what drops in there.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think we have one question still on the queue that's a top 5, and so I was saving that for later. But we're going to get to all of them. If you ask us, I promise we will get to them.
Yeah.
Because they're, like I said, we know some smart people, and I like it. I like it a lot. But for the last part of this show, as always, we have a roundtable book. We're not going to let you get out of here without talking about a little bit of comic, some current stuff, something we read, giving a review, if you will. And so the book that we read this week it's an interesting book. It's I had to think about what I thought about it for a while. I had to sit down and spend some time reflecting on this book. And it's Vindication, #1. It's created by Matt Hawkins and M.D. Marie. Now, Matt Hawkins is what grabbed my attention with this book. I love Matt Hawkins, everything he does with Top Cow.
He didn't do the writing on it.
No, he didn't. He's just part of the creative, the inception, if you will. It was written by M.D. Marie, pencils by Carlos Miko, inks by Dema Jr., who I'm not familiar with, colors by Thiago Conclaves, and letters by Troy Peteri. And this book, it came out from Image, which is, I guess Top Cow is still technically a subset.
It's an Image imprint.
Yeah, it's an imprint from those guys. Because Matt Hawkins, like, when I think of Top Cow, I think of Matt Hawkins.
Well, so Mark Silvestri and Matt Hawkins run Top Cow.
Yeah.
So it's their kind of imprint into Image.
Yeah.
What it is, so.
This book was,
Kind of
like
like
I said,
Skybound, I think, is Kirkman's.
yeah, that's Kirkman's. Well, so with the Image guys, when they created Image, they all had their own art studios.
Yeah.
It caused some problems.
Yeah.
in those, was a really good documentary.
Yeah.
I think on Hulu or no, I don't think it's Netflix. I think it's Hulu or might be
It's out
Amazon
there.
Prime. You can go watch. This book, give you a little bit of rundown. There is a character named Tern Washington. He'd been convicted to a life sentence for a crime that he says he didn't commit, and it turns out he might not have. You don't really know for sure in this first issue, but he's released 10 years later. He does a dime in the pen. Loses 10 years of his life, and then DNA evidence clears him. We don't see any of that really on the page. We get one page of him getting convicted, and then you get him getting out of prison. And he's not a very well-liked individual. Like, the guards don't like the fact that he's getting out of jail. Everybody thinks this dude is guilty. Everybody's really pissed that this murderer is essentially walking on a technicality, or at least that's the way they think. As he's leaving, the detective who worked the initial case 10 years before, this guy named Detective Christopher, he thinks Tern is just as guilty as the day that he did when he put him away. He basically assaults Tern as he's leaving the jail, which gets caught on camera. And that turns into a big thing. Like, they see this arresting officer upset about this case, the evidence overturning his conviction, basically pushing Tern Washington down outside of the prison. And, the news media is just waiting on that. He's a white cop. And I have to say that in this, you can't get out of race because they make race a very important part of the story. It's a black man convicted of murder for life, getting out on a technicality, who got put away by a white cop. You can't live in today's environment and not see the...
Well, and it's LAPD too, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of goes back to Rodney King and the whole... So, anyways, go continue.
Oh, no, you're good. I think that's absolutely a major part of it. So Detective Christopher is really pissed about this. He goes back to his precinct. He's having a bad day. And then he finds out that he's getting a new partner. And Christopher, he's one of those lone ranger cops. He's a guy who likes to work alone, not really big into sharing anything. But he gets a new partner, and it's a Latino woman. It's Detective Maggie Cruz. And she's pretty damn savvy. She's a pretty damn good cop. She runs down a list of some other cases she's worked on. She got a commendation for busting a murderer.
Which is also a commentary that the Latino woman has to give her resume to her new partner
Right.
for him to accept
Right.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. So while they're getting to know each other and kind of feeling each other out, realizing there's going to be some animosity there on some level, they get called to a murder scene. It's L.A., so crimes are happening.
As they do.
Bodies are dropping. And so they get called to this murder scene, and it's just brutal. It's gruesome. It's a bloody mess. But this isn't just any crime scene. They recognize something about it. There's something familiar. There's a modus operandi that's being followed here that even the beat cop knows. And so as they're walking on the crime scene, he's like, hey, this is familiar, but I just can't place it. It's a case has to be over a decade ago. And they run down the list of, was this case? No. Was that one? No. Was it? Nah. You would think it'd be on the back of Detective Christopher's mind what this is, but they get in there, and what they realize is that the murder victim was a member of the jury on the Tern Washington case that got him convicted, which, by the way, was an all-white jury.
Mm-hmm.
It was an all-white jury that convicted a black man wrongfully, according to the DNA evidence, of murder. As it goes on from there, you start to realize that not only is Detective Christopher just kind of an asshole, he may also be a really dirty cop.
Mm-hmm.
He plants some evidence that makes it look like Tern was there. But because Matt Hawkins and M.D. Marie are creative, they flip that on his head. He was actually there. as as they're there, they get pulled off the case, and because some more detectives show up and they're like, "Hey, did you not get the text message? You're not supposed to be here." And they're like, "Why?" It's like, "Hey, the boss, the chief, doesn't want you anywhere near the case. They found out that she was a juror. You guys got to go back to the office." They get back. Internal Affairs is there, and they're saying, "Hey, we're kind of launching this investigation
because you punched it,
right? Because you
pushed down a convict or whatever."
Yeah, Nightly News is running this clip of you punching a guy that walked out for free, making it they're doing their spin thing and making it look really bad, because it looked really bad.
Well, I mean, yeah, the news media was there when he's getting out of jail because it was such a big case and such a big deal that he's getting out of prison. So
yeah, and so that's prompted this internal affairs investigation,
right.
With some people who, at least one person that doesn't really like him personally, and as you're leaving, you find out that another person likes him more than she should because they've been sleeping together.
Yeah.
So there's this entire web of like malpractice inside this office from the LA Police Department that it's building on itself. You've got an internal affairs officer who the person.
But I think there's a key point to that.
Oh, I think there is,
because to who he's sleeping with,
mm-hmm.
she's a black woman.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like hidden stuff going on here. Is he really a racist? Is he really a dirty cop? There's a lot of layers to this number one issue.
Right, because if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm remembering right, because he had the envelope with turned stuff when they got into their tussle. He had an envelope, I think, with the money they gave him for leaving, and when he dropped it on the crime scene, essentially leaving it there, was that not accidental?
That was not the envelope with the money. So
he had something that had
he had a picture.
That's what it was.
That it had an address, which turned out to be the address of the murder site.
Right.
That Turn dropped when they got into the tussle.
Oh.
The detective picked it up and it happened to be in his pocket and fell out of his pocket.
And he didn't
at the crime scene.
So he accidentally planted it, but he didn't try to retrieve it.
No, well,
once it happened,
he dropped it.
Yeah.
His partner noticed it, and she said, "Hey, I think you dropped this." And he saw what it was. He's like, "I didn't drop it." So he accidentally planted it, but then he doubled down on it.
Absolutely,
and knew it.
I just want to make sure I was remembering that right.
He's a dirty cop, but he might not be like. So it would be real easy to take this cop and just hate him.
Yeah.
Because real easy to think of this cop as just a flat out racist. But I think Craig's absolutely right. They're taking this and they're putting some nuance in there. They're putting some context in there that makes you question a lot of those things.
The racism is almost so heavy handed that you want to hate him. But then when you realize he's sleeping with a black cop and you start piecing this together, it's like, maybe there's more to this. I mean, there's certainly some subtext and some nuance there that has not been revealed to us yet.
Right.
Well, that's just it. I think it's a commentary on the differences between overt racism and subvert racism.
Yeah.
I think it's real easy to look at a cop. If you look at a small picture, you look at a cop like Detective Christopher, and you're like, oh no, this guy's just overtly racist because he's doing some overtly racist things. But then you find out that, well, can you be a white man? I mean, Sean, you're married to a woman of color.
Yes.
Can you be a white man who is attracted to and has a relationship with a black woman and still do subvertly racist things? Like, I think that's the commentary here, because one of the loudest racist voices in comics right now, the comics hate people, has got children by a woman of color who are Islamic. And that's the point he always goes back to. Oh, I can't be racist. I have children. I have children of color. I have Arabic kids, and bullshit. And he absolutely is a racist.
Were you going to answer that, Sean?
Oh, I mean, anybody.
Are you a racist, Sean?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I hate white people. Right? No, the reality is this: I don't care what race, who you're married to, what race you are. You can be racist.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a unifying thing amongst people.
Yeah, it's part of the culture.
So yes, even though he may be sleeping with a black cop, there may be racial tendencies. And and granted, this is the first of only 4 issues that we're going to get of this book. And like I said, it was, so as you mentioned, heavy handed in the beginning. Honestly, it was kind of turned me off. It's kind of a very bland story. I've seen this story before. It wasn't bringing anything new. Then at the end, they kind of get you with some little nuances of like, is he racist? And it's like, for me, it kind of put into the question of like, we automatically assume, because we've seen the situation so many times in the real world as well as in fiction, of the white cop who is convince the black criminal is guilty simply because of race.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what they're kind of laying out, which was kind of the saving grace at the end for me for this book, was maybe he would have felt just as strongly if all the evidence was also on a white criminal. Like it's not nothing to do with the fact that Turn is black. It's just that he really thinks he's just a piece of shit who did this.
It's how the narrative is presented.
I think that's what they're going for. I think they were hitting you heavy handed, so you had all these expectations and thought you knew where it was going. Well, and then by the end, it turns out ahead, as it should, especially in like I said, a 4-issue series is all this is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the twists and turns are going to come fairly quick. I would like to see more of Turn.
Yeah.
To be honest.
You didn't get him outside of the first couple pages.
The story I wanted was really the whole time I think you should be questioning who is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is Turn actually playing the innocent and he actually did it? Or is the cop dirty and it's all him, going after him? Like, I think that would have been a little bit better for me in this book.
Yeah.
But overall, like, dialogue, art, it's all well put together.
Right.
Yeah, and it definitely has that potential for the second issue to pick up from his perspective and stuff. I don't know. It kind of felt a little flat to me in the dialogue, and the art didn't really mix with the tone of what was going on to me. Like in the scene that he was talking about where, he's getting this new partner put on him. He's like open tooth, toothy smile and everything. And I'm like, that's not the feeling of the emotion that I'm getting from this character. So it seemed a little weird. And I don't like whenever they were at the crime scene, some of the dialogue seemed a little like, slow pitch to us. Like it's like we should know these characters already or something, like they're not, it was a weird introduction to
at least for a first issue.
Yeah.
By the time the story's full, maybe it'll flesh out more, but it's kind of a rough beginning, I would say.
So I thought the story was very good. I did have a problem with the dialogue in it as well.
Yeah, same.
So my issue with the dialogue is that it's very almost cop showish.
Yeah.
It's giving like some false narratives into how the justice system really works and making assumptions the same way a cop show does. And I had some issues with that where it kind of would pull me out of the story for a second.
Right.
I think the reason that Turn wasn't in it more is because if you had him in it, you would have known what he was doing during the murder, and they couldn't show that because that's going to be the whole point of the book.
Right.
So I do think the second book is going to be more of a Turn story than this. I think we're going to see kind of a jumping back and forth.
Well, even if it's like a flashback of Turn, maybe their first encounter, they're showing something. I would like that.
There's a big detail that we've kind of left out up until this point, and that's that Detective Christopher is in contact with the family. I think it's either the mother or the father, I'm not sure, of the original murder victim from 10 years ago, and they're calling him wanting to know, like, why is this monster getting out of jail? Why is this murder getting out of jail? And after he gets pulled off the case, after he gets in the little tussle, the argument with the internal affairs officers, he goes back to his desk. He gets another one of those phone calls from a weird person, but he also has an envelope sitting on his desk, and there is a disc.
In his car.
Is it in his car?
Yeah.
Okay. There is a disc that has pictures of Turn with the woman who was just murdered at her apartment. And so you see a little bit like that's what I'm saying. He planted evidence, but you also, by the end of the book, you find out that Turn was actually there, so you don't know. It's this mystery of did they or didn't they?
It's Turn leaving the apartment with
her
her standing
alive.
at the door.
Yep, and she's still very much alive.
Or her place, whatever, apartment, house, whatever it was.
But that mixture of things, like Craig, what you're talking about, and Jerry, you as well, the dialogue, it's rough.
Yeah.
This is not Matt, like you said, this is not Matt Hawkins writing this.
If it was Matt Hawkins, that dialogue would have been nailed down.
Sharp.
Yeah, and even like not only the dialogue between characters, but like his like thought balloons and everything, things that he was thinking just seemed like so unnatural. Like you're not gonna like he was just, it was almost like he was thinking and pointing out everything in the room. It's almost like that older Marvel style where they feel like they have to explain their entire thought process.
Yeah, and it's not right.
Yeah.
Process.
Yeah,
that was my problem with it.
What got me more than the dialogue though was the story's pacing.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of this story takes place within one day. So you have the flashback from 10 years, then you have something that you get another page and that jumps 3 days. This story, the pacing is really, really jacked up. because there's a lot of stuff that happens in one day. So they get called to the crime scene. They know nothing about it. While they're entering the crime scene, they don't know who this person is. It takes them a minute to find out that this is a former juror from the case. Within 10 minutes later, some more detectives roll up and be like, hey, we got to pull you off this case because this case has to do all these things, like the phone calls were made.
Well, so the whole thing is one thing you're missing there is that she had to go set up her office and all of that first, which was really weird too.
Yeah.
And a problem I had. You just got a murder case. You set up your office when you get back from the case.
Yeah.
So presumably there's a period of time that happens from when she's his partner, Detective Cruz, I think was her name, is introduced to him, that you have this period of time that happens. In the meantime, you have a case sitting there. They show up and the medical examiner still isn't there yet.
Right.
So it's like,
it's moving too fast.
Parts of it are moving too fast and parts are moving way too slow. It's
Like,
not coinciding.
I think they might have screwed themselves by wanting to do a 4-issue.
Maybe.
Like this, especially like if this story could lead to where my mind would want to go of like, because you asked like my opinion being married to a woman of color.
Right.
They could touch on a subject that I'm sadly familiar with. Although, like I said, I don't blame people for being suspicious because of how society is.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I'm married to a black woman doesn't, like, here's my safeguard, right? Now, there's no way I can be this. But when you're suspicious of anyone for any reason, even regardless of their color, but if you are not of the same race, it can come across that way.
Yeah.
And that might be the bigger narrative they're going to go, at least as far as his arc is like, it just looks that way because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
And that could be it, but I don't feel like that's what this book is going to end up doing. If it does, I'll be highly impressed within 4 issues of addressing a subject like that. It's a come across heavy-handed, they rushed, and you said ironically slowed at sometimes. Dialogue, I agree, like the whole, is it this? No. Is it this? No. That was almost a wasted panel.
Yeah, it was. There was wasted time.
Yeah. So overall, it might be your jam if you like this kind of idea of like the dirty cop scenario. But like I said, I see it could have potential, but I don't care enough to go look at any more issues.
So you're not getting issue 2?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Yeah.
Since it's only a 4-issue series, I kind of like the story enough to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not on this book, but I will read it digitally. I want to see where the story goes. I like the story enough to see where it.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll be coming back for issue 2. Like I said, the source material would keep me going. But it's just like the dialogue and the pacing is just I'm not like
you have to like crime stories. I think to be
and
interested. And
that's a big thing for me is I'm not big into. You guys know me. I fucking watch Cosmic Ghost Riders, shooting things in the face, and I'm not. It's more of like I don't really get into like real world.
I was going to say comics for you are an idea of escapism.
Exactly. Yeah, I like my fantasy and science fiction and stuff like that. It's
understandable. I like a good crime story.
Yeah, I actually like because some of the books I read are very true to life stuff, and I like the I write literary fiction, so I write real world drama, and I like getting into the psychology of what we're seeing every day. I think there's a really, really good story being told. Or I think there's a really, really good story in here. I just don't think it's what's being given to us.
Yeah.
There were some parts of this book where they got me. I was in that. I was in the narrative, and I was like, okay, but then within a few panels, I was dropped back out.
Yeah.
I just the execution's not there for me. I may.
It was a roller coaster.
Yeah, I may pick up the second issue and see if they are able to iron some of those out. I'm not in a hurry to rush out and get it though.
Right.
There are other good crime stories being told.
Mm-hmm.
There are other good comics that deal with the nuances of race in America being told.
Southern Bastards is a great one.
Yeah.
Well, the Southern Bastards, I don't know, is being told.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like one of those real world things that touches on like racism and the South and everything.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's definitely literature out there that has handled this.
Yeah,
better done because like I'm not big into crime, but even I watch CSI and little shows like that, like the crime stuff. But it takes usually like a unique case or very likable characters, and the dialogue has to drag me in for that because obviously the art can be, for me, for some reason, crime stories, usually art's a very big factor. Like for me, it has to be the dialogue.
Yeah.
For that to drive me more than, I don't care how beautiful you drew the crime scene, really, and that kind of stuff. I need, well written stuff, and this is just not there for me.
Like we were talking about before, or it may make it to the show. I'm not sure, but the book that you were watching, Black Klansman, and Craig mentioned a book. I think it's Brian Hill. That's kind of like Black Klansman, to where it's a white person it's a black person that goes undercover.
Yeah. What was that book?
Oh yeah, American Carnage. I'm sorry,
American
I drew a blank.
When you have a book like American Carnage on the shelf that's telling a very similar story, it's doing a very similar thing, it's going to be a longer arc. That, to me, I'd rather read that and get some of the same from a writer of color. And I don't know, I didn't Google it. I don't know if this writer is I know Matt Hawkins is a white dude. I don't know if the other writer writing this is a woman of color. But
yeah, she is.
Is she? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Brian Hill is, and I know that story is really, really good.
Yeah.
So I'd just rather kind of go read that. Not to hate. I mean, we don't hate it. Like, it's very rare that you get a book that we're all just kind of like meh on, which is kind of
That's
disappointing.
kind of how I am.
Like, it's not terrible, but it's not. It didn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
It's a crime drama. Like I said, I'll read the rest of it digitally, but I'm not going to go buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, go buy the physical copies.
It's a swing and a miss.
I want to be clear, guys. I'm not stealing comics. I'm not going to go buy the physical copies
Right.
of it. So,
Well, let's see your receipts, Greg. Oh wait.
What? We used to have a fourth host on this show. What happened to that guy?
Hashtag 3-man podcast.
You'll see us loading Jerry into the back of a trunk later.
I'm going to come back and haunt this podcast.
Right?
It's going to be a 3-man, 1 ghost podcast.
All right, so that's a disappointing that none of us really dug this book. But hey, every week new books come out, and every week, every Wednesday is New Comic Book Day, and it's our favorite day of the week. I'm speaking for everybody. I'm taking that one. But there are some new books coming out this very Wednesday that I think all of us are looking forward to. I can't wait. Craig, what's coming out this week that you're going to be checking out?
Well, for Castro, I just want to point out that there's like 4 new Boundless books that are starting. in Juggle Fantasy issue number 2.
You're gonna put that man's porn out there like that, man. Don't make him swell up his other hand, dude.
For me personally, Wonder Twins number 1 comes out.
Ooh.
I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but this book's already got some controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The 2 pages that they put as a preview
Yep.
is apparently showing an orgy that's not an orgy. People are freaking out about something that's literally not happening.
When you look for something to get angry about, you'll find it every time.
So, let's wait and see what it is in the context of the overall story. I actually had not our normal local comic book guy, but another local comic book guy start in on me on this orgy scene. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't seen it yet. So I went and found one of my books and looked at the and I'm like, that is not at all the way it was portrayed to me.
You know what? I'm going to flat out address it because I flipped through the preview. I think it was in my Teen Titans. Is it the scene where people just floating around kissing each other, fully clothed?
Yeah.
That's an orgy now?
Yeah.
Y'all need to get your sex life in order here because that's not a fucking orgy.
Yeah. So,
well, they do mention that it's like
no, I've been to orgies. I'm
flying
agreeing.
around,
I needed you to back me up.
flying around. Jace is obviously like, yes, whenever these storms happen or whatever, the lust basically takes.
Yeah, I mean,
over.
but they're not showing anything.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
it's not jungle fantasy happening.
He's essentially talking about people making love. He's essentially talking about people making love and everything, but they're not like
So again, I'm going to read it because it's Wonder Twins number 1, and it's Wonder Twins. So it needs to be read.
Who's writing on that? Do we know yet?
Yeah, we know, but I don't know. Which is it?
I'm sorry, dude. I think it's Mark Russell.
I normally have that written down. I'm going to look it up right now. You guys
think
go
it's
on.
well. The reason I said that is I think it's Mark Russell, and if it's Mark Russell, that makes me that leads me to believe that the people aren't really upset about what the double page spread shows. They're upset that Mark Russell has a voice in comics that they don't like. Because I love some Mark Russell.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know in a second.
Mark Russell, Stephen
it's Mark
Byrne,
Russell.
and
Wow.
Dustin Nguyen.
I mean, that's an amazing team.
Yeah,
on
that's
this book.
a kick-ass team.
So I'm sorry I didn't know that.
Oh, no,
already, I probably did.
It looks
forgot,
like Dustin Nguyen's just doing the variant, one of the variants
covers.
Yeah.
You know, I actually mentioned this the other day that I'm surprised that they haven't went after Mark Russell with a heavier hand.
Oh, they try.
Yeah.
they try. So the book I'm the most excited about this week, again, it's another one of those books that if you're looking for just pure escapism, it's probably not for you. If you're looking for a book that is just going to be dumb and fun, or maybe kind of masculine. It's just not for you. It's a book it speaks to the human experience. It's a book that really ties into the emotions of what it is to be alive in the world. And that's Savage Sword of Conan #1. I got one chuckle out of that. You fuckers. Savage Sword of Conan #1 is coming out. It's Jerry Duggan and Ron Garney doing it. I'm excited to see what this is, because the last book that I read of Jerry Duggan's was the Dead Rabbits book that got taken off the shelves because of
I'm not
some
supposed
copyright.
to say that.
They can come at me.
He gets censored and it's not even his editing.
Yeah,
His
no.
gets beat.
And that was taken off. Like, that book was hyper violent. That book was fun, and I cannot wait to see, like, knowing that he's writing in that mindset. Cannot wait to see what he does with my boy Conan.
It could also end up being Deadpool.
Awesome.
It could also end up being Deadpool. I did not think of that, and I hate you now.
If I'm not mistaken, and it's not even the variant, it is the standard cover is going to be an Alex Ross cover.
Yes,
which is
yeah.
fucking awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man. So I'm sad you guys didn't laugh harder at mine.
I'm sorry.
I gave you what I could. Sorry.
You did.
Try harder next time.
I'm sorry, Caleb.
Sean,
It was good. I'm sorry.
It wasn't.
It was. Yeah.
Don't placate me.
All right. Sean, what do you got?
The issue I'm looking forward to next week is a book series that Jerry put me on, I believe, late last year. We haven't gotten the third issue in a very long time. Is Lollipop Kids #3. That's come from.
God, that was a book.
I know. It's
Holy
been a while.
shit.
It's published by Aftershock Comics, written by Adam and Aidan Glass, with the artist is Diego Yapur. It's already a very interesting story of kids who go to Central Park having to battle demons that no one else can see unless you become a lollipop kid. And Jerry lent me the first 2 issues because he got on those. Like I said, I want to say this is like October or so of last year that the last issue came out. So I read those 2, got hooked instantly, and been waiting for this third issue to come out for whatever reason. It's been delayed. So I'm hyped. Part 3 is coming out next week.
It's a good story.
Something that I have been waiting on for well over a year now. They are finally releasing the trade paperback for Miracle Man by Tom King and Mitch Gerrits.
Hell yeah.
And I feel like, internet is easily accessible to us. And I could look up when it's released, but that didn't stop me from messaging Tony often, like, hey, can make sure that I get one of these, because I've heard phenomenal things about it. You guys talk about Batman all the time. I'm excited about this book. I've heard
24
so many
panels of him eating carrots.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It is an Eisner Award winner, and I am picking it up.
Yeah. And it really kind of sucked because as it was coming out, I think it was one of those things where we got a low shipment on it or something like that. So I wasn't able to get the issues by the time the hype was built up for it, and feel kind of sad about that. But the trade comes out, so it's going to remedy everything. I cannot wait to read it.
It's good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to the listener questions for a second.
Okay.
Because talking about Wonder Twins reminded me of one that was a total and complete surprise to everyone sitting at this table.
Okay.
Flintstones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Also, Mark
that
Russell.
was completely off of the charts. No one knew about that book, and I started reading it, and I'm like, guys, everybody needs to read this book.
Yeah, I feel like the Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera stuff in general. Yeah. But also, Gideon Falls comes out next week, and Magic Order finally finishes, so I guess I'll get caught up in that.
Very cool. Well, guys, are we ready to bring this thing home?
Yeah, let's call it.
All right. Well, hey, folks, thank you for spending the last hour and a half or so with us sitting at the table talking about some funny books and some comics and some this, that, and the other. We had a great time. Those listener questions were badass. I want to reiterate that. Those were some great questions. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. We're doing this once a month, so we're relying on you. If you don't send us the questions in, it's just going to be me.
It's going to be a really short episode.
And you know what kind of questions I'm going to ask. So it's not going to be fun for anyone. If you have enjoyed this, and we really hope you have, do us a solid. Go over to our wherever you download the podcast from, really, and rate and review us. Let folks know that you're really enjoying the podcast.
For sure.
It lets us know how we're doing, and also bumps us up on their algorithm, so we're more readily available. We're seen, and we like being seen. It makes us feel good.
Or at least heard.
Yeah, well, true. Jerry likes being seen. He's a selfie master.
Caleb's still not over his scene face.
I hate you.
I'm going to start keeping track of how many times he says that to Jerry throughout the show.
Where was I? Okay. Come
Give
hang
us
out with
ratings.
us. yeah, give us some ratings. Come hang out with us on our Facebook group. We're having a great time. You'll make friends there, and I mean that. You'll make some people. You'll meet people that you don't know from all around the country who are loving the same things you guys do, and that's rad. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're at SFG Podcast, and from there, go forth, love some comics. Woo!